Marie de France enters the Arthurian tradition with Lanval. The legends of Arthur have been developing for some time. By the time she got to it, she's not inventing anything, but it was really starting to develop a corpus on its own that she took advantage of. There was a growing legendary status, and she was writing for nobles in England, so they were interested in Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and the notion of a glorious past for their nation, and so she is going to feed that hunger. Give them what they want. The story itself, Lanval, is a story of one of the not quite headliner knights of the Round Table, but it's a story of somebody who's perhaps a little overlooked, perhaps a little underappreciated, and that's really kind of the key. She's zeroing in on this not to tell a original story, but to bring out a thread from the Arthurian tradition that is perhaps not so emphasized in other examples of it. People like Chrétien de Troyes is doing something very different at roughly the same time. And she's also drawing a little bit of a distinction between the world of the chivalric and the world of the courtly. The chivalric is generally more associated with Chrétien and the daring do and the adventures and the slaying of dragons and all of that. For Marie de France, she is more interested in the courtly, in the setting of the court, because, well, that's what she knew, quite frankly. She was a creature of the court. She is a court poet. She is around to entertain people sitting around the court. So that's pretty much what she does in her work. And with Lanval, she gets an opportunity to do it on a somewhat grander scale. It's one of the longer of the 12 lays, and it's probably one of the most fully developed in terms of its sophistication and its not character, but the sense of conflicting motivations throughout. It begins on a very realistic note, significant because Marie de France brings in the supernatural element pretty quickly. But it begins with a very political note, one that's going to play well to a audience of knights laying around, but also to ground the story in a kind of realism so that she has a foundation from which to, okay, we're all together on this, now I've got you, let's start to move into some of the weirder stuff. She says, Arthur, the brave and courtly king, was staying at Cardwell because the Scots and the Picts were destroying the land. They invaded Logres and laid it waste. This is politics. This is war. This is all of the stuff of the chivalric tradition of the warrior class that is A, going to interest the people that she's entertaining, and B, sets this tone for that chivalric code that she is going to turn away from. She mentions the Round Table. She mentions Arthur, and then she mentions, and there's this other knight over there. His name is Lanval, and he is introduced as kind of the outsider. Nobody seems to like him. Arthur forgets him when he's doling out gifts to his Round Table. He just overlooks Lanval. He's somewhat forgettable. And for that, the other knights kind of take that cue, and they're not that interested either. He's not at the cool kids table. This comes despite the fact that Lanval has, of course, he is a knight. He is the son of a king. We're told he was the son of a king of high degree, but he was far from his heritage. He was of the king's household, but he had spent all his wealth. So he has fallen on a little bit of hard times. And you can think that, the son of a king spent all of his wealth. Does that mean that he's kind of worthless? He's just out there tossing away daddy's money? Well, you got to remember also that in this age, if you're the firstborn son, you're pretty much set up in the aristocratic class. You are going to be the next earl, the next duke, the next whatever. So your life is pretty settled. But for the siblings following you, all of your little brothers and sisters, life is a little bit more uncertain. For Lanval, we're told that he is far from home, and that is probably very accurate. If your big brother is taking care of daddy's realm and daddy's bank account, the little brothers have to, go wander around and find their way in the world. A number of them, of course, go into the church. They're made, archbishops or something like that. And just as many probably found their way into military service as knights, as Lanval is. And he is, you get the sense, far afield from his ancestral homeland. And, he's got to pinch some pennies at this point. He doesn't really have very much. This is also, of course, an interesting parallel for the consideration of Marie's situation herself. Marie is far from home. She is Marie de France, from France, and she is writing in English, or she's writing in England. She is herself far from home, in a sense. She's not really making her way in the world. She is attached to the royal court, and it is the court of Eleanor of Aquitaine primarily, so it is a very cozy court to be in, a very French court to be in. She's writing in Anglo-Norman. This is probably what she spoke on a normal basis. So she's not exactly a stranger in a strange land, but she is an outsider. She is quite powerless, and she feels that sense of exile. And Lanval is an exile. He is far from home, he is powerless, he is overlooked, and he feels vulnerable. And that is largely the role of a woman in the medieval era. Certainly the role of Marie de France. A poor knight is like a woman. They are both dependent on the powerful men around them. In Lanval's case, it's Arthur. In Marie's case, it's probably Arthur again, or not Arthur, but Henry II, or his son, or the local monarch at the time. So, okay, we're focused in on Lanval. And we're told, yes, he's good looking, he's charming, he's brave, he's all of these great things. But the key thing we're told is that he doesn't really have any money, and people tend to ignore him. So, he wanders off. He decides, well, okay, nobody wants to play with me. I'll go off. Where does he go? He goes to the woods. And right there, that's your tip-off. Because when you go to the woods, you are almost always inviting an adventure into the supernatural. The woods, you have to think in terms of like the Forest of Arden in Shakespeare, where magical beings tend to scurry around. It is connected with nature. It is connected with that Celtic tradition of nature and animism, and the spirit world being more profuse in nature. And it is outside the organized social structure of a city, or in this case of a royal court. Very hierarchical, very socially rigid, and he is now outside that in something more organic, certainly, but certainly also more spiritual. And you get that sense almost immediately, because he goes and his horse starts to tremble badly, we are told, and he is a little bit anxious, and Lanval has to get off the horse and just let the horse go roam off on its own. And we're told he goes rolling around in a meadow. And this is significant. A lot of scholars will key in on this moment and say that, well, this is a sign that, okay, The story at this point is leaving the chivalric code behind. The chivalric tradition is gone at this point because, well, cheval means horse in French, and the idea of the chivalric code is the code of being a knight, the code of being a horseman going into battle. So when he leaves his horse, it's an odd little detail. It's like the horse became bothered, and why, what's the deal? When he leaves his horse, that is a sign of leaving the chivalric world behind, and you are moving into something a little bit different. And he goes and he sits down under a tree by a stream. And if you read this stuff with any attention over time, you realize that these are all very potent symbols for settings, for supernatural encounters, let's say. And sure enough, he's sitting there and he has one. A pair of beautiful girls come up, and they're followed by another pair of even more beautiful girls, and then they are followed by the lady. A magical lady, a miraculous woman, who is the most beautiful woman Lanval has ever seen. She is, we are told that she is going to arrive. We're given this sense of fanfare by the attendants who are coming, who bring a basin for washing, so that Lanval will be proper in engaging with her, which has a kind of ritualistic feel to it. Certainly, he must be cleansed. He must be pure in order to engage with this lady. And all of this is, again, symbolism that, okay, this is not a woman of that this is not the girl next door. This is somebody who is ideal. This is somebody who is very special, certainly, but perhaps probably supernatural. And they come, they set up this tent. We're given a long description of the tent, not too long, but we're given a description of how luxurious the tent is, and how quite romantic it is, how spiritual it is, how idealistic it is. Again, the idea of the tent can be traced. Some scholars trace that to, well, the tents of Bedouins. You're having a little sense of the Orientalism here, but the idea is that it is a very luxurious place, a very otherworldly place. It is not the lockdown structure of the court. And the girl, the woman, the lady, offers herself to Lanval. Quite frankly, it's a seduction. And she says, okay, you can have me. We will do this. And she is initiating this action with him. That's very significant. She is the powerful one here. He's just kind of like, whoa, me? What? But she takes the initiative. She sets the agenda. She has agency in this, is the way you could say it. And she says, okay, I will love you, and I will allow you to love me. It's that kind of power dynamic that they have already, on the condition that you never speak of me. You never tell anyone. If you do that, if you respect my privacy, so to speak, and you be my I be your secret, you allow me to be secret, then you will have everything. And significantly, she says this. She says, "I will be at your beck and call, and we will be available for love at any time, day or night," which is right there, quite the offer. But she says, on top of that, I will give you money, I will give you wealth, I will provide for you everything that you don't have. Think about that. He has been struggling as the poor knight, the overlooked knight, the unappreciated knight, and suddenly he is being offered all the trappings that he has never had. But it is conditioned on that aspiration. You have to respect the ideal. I ask you for discretion. I ask you for a certain secret to be lodged within you. You have to respect that. You have to preserve that. If you do that, if you respect the ideal of me, then you can have everything. Interesting. The emphasis is on devotion and service. She is coming as a representative of the courtly love ideal. She is demanding that he serve her with absolute loyalty and respect the purity of her ideal. And for that, she will reciprocate. And this is the courtly tradition. This is courtly love. This is he will worship her and respect the ideal of her. And in return, she will grant him all her favors, material and physical. The focus is on her. She is keeping that, and she is allowing this transaction to go through because she is in full control of it. Just think of that power dynamic again for Marie. Marie, who is herself probably often quite overlooked, probably often feels quite unappreciated. Artists of all kinds have always felt that, but particularly women artists, or women in general, probably of that era. Again, probably more often than ever. But there is that kind of tantalizing fantasy, that tantalizing allure of appreciation, of a recognition of a value that is not necessarily social, that is special, that is interior. Lanval can have all of this as long as he just keeps it to himself. He can have all of the money and share it around and be the most popular guy and throw the best parties and have all the best stuff. But he can't say where it came from. He can't say what he has benefited from. He can't admit the core of why he is suddenly special. That has to stay inside. That has to stay a secret. And, well, that's kind of a female perspective in that. That is, a female, might have some control over the luxury of a household, but the recognition, the dynamic is of the relationship with the man is all towards the man. Here, Marie is clawing some of that power back and founding it in the female, in the woman's character, and Lanval was okay. He went along with that. Once he says, he's going to go along with it, they are able to make love. They strike this deal. They have a lovely time. We're given this nice little word or nice little sentence in here. Now Lanval is well cared for. She would provide what he needed. Now Lanval is well cared for, which in the old Anglo-Norman, the French is aurait Lanval bien hébergé. Which a lot of scholars, critics, linguists will seize on a little, because that same line is repeated. It pops up in like line 141 and then is repeated about a dozen lines later. Where at first they're talking about the economic arrangement, and then they're talking about, the physical arrangement. He lay beside her on the bed. Now Lanval is well cared for, or is well housed, or couched is sometimes the translation. And some critics will seize in on that and say, well, it's actually kind of a dirty pun, saying, he is housed or couched between her thighs. It's fun, and you can see in a room full of lusty knights, Marie de France doing a little wink there, doing a little, a little eye roll or something, and having some fun with that. Is because it's a little cheeky, it's a little bit sexy, and that's part of the fun of this place. Because she is bringing all of these knights along, all of these very male, macho guys in this storytelling milieu. She's bringing them along for what is a story about a woman holding a knight at her beck and call. Yes, she is doing that by offering her own beck and callness, but she has all of the power. And you can see, macho guy knights resisting that a little bit. Oh, I don't know, that's a little too unrealistic. Okay, sure, I'll go along with the magical beings and the fairies and the spirits in the forest, but a woman with power, good God, no. But she is doing it, and she's doing it in a way that will appeal to these men, and whether or not they're picking up on the power dynamics explicitly is kind of beside the point. She is managing to craft this story that inverts the normal structure that oppresses women and seep some ideas into the culture of her time. Of course, Lanval goes and has a great time. Now he's suddenly Mr. Popular. He is spending like crazy. He's, which again, you think back to, well, okay, we're told he spent all of his father's money. I don't know how much that was, but now he has unlimited money, and he's just going crazy. He's throwing all these parties. There was no knight in the city who really needed a place to stay, whom he didn't invite to join him to be well and richly served. Lanval gave rich gifts. Lanval released prisoners. Lanval dressed jongleurs, performers. Lanval offered great honors. There was no stranger or friend to whom Lanval didn't give. Lanval's joy and pleasure were intense in the daytime or at night. He could see his love often. She was completely at his command. He's living the high life. But significantly also, the way he's spreading the money around, the way he is sharing. Think in terms of the medieval bit about the king's role towards his vassals is to share the wealth, to spread it around. From you get that all the way back to Beowulf in England, and the contrast is subtle. But what is Lanval's problem at the very beginning of the play or of the poem? That Arthur was imperfect in his sharing. Arthur overlooked him. Arthur would, share with some of the others, but, not necessarily Lanval, which suggests maybe not necessarily others as well. He was perhaps flawed in his sharing, flawed in his tribute. The contrast suggests that, well, maybe Lanval is now exercising a kind of ideal of royalty, ideal of kingship. He is the ideal king in this, because his relationship is that he gets and he gives it out. He does not hoard. That is an interesting notion that a lot of critics will seize on, and of course, it suggests that, well, if he is suddenly an ideal king over and above Arthur, who is the ideal for Britain, well, something has to happen there, because that's a conflict. You can have Arthur, you can have Lanval. You can't necessarily have them both. The other knights start to come along, where we get a nice little cameo by Sir Gawain. who sees that, who starts to come around and say, okay, we're going out to do our night games. We're going to go hang out with the guys. Hey, we've never really invited a Lanval. Why don't we have him along? Let's go get him. Suddenly, because Lanval is paying so much for everybody and throwing such great parties and all of that, suddenly he's much more popular. What a mystery. But one day, Lanval and Gawain, all the other knights, are hanging out and doing guy stuff, and the queen, Guinevere, just happens to be looking at her window from her tower up above, looking at her window and sees all those knights, and hey, I've never really seen Lanval before. I've never really looked at him, never noticed him. He is being noticed. Again, that sense of being appreciated for the first time. And so Guinevere says, yeah. Guinevere, she invites him up, says, come here, sailor. Let's get to know one another. Let's get friendly. And she pitches herself to him. Now, he has already been pitched by the divine lady, by the spirit lady. But now we're getting Guinevere, a human being. And the tone is a little different. The tone is a little bit haughtier. The tone is a little bit more less generous, let's say. A little bit coarser. And she says, okay, I will allow you to love me. Now, this is in keeping with the tradition of Guinevere, who married fairly young to the much older Arthur. She embarks on the great affair with Lancelot, and of course, through the tradition of courtly love and extramarital dalliances, not necessarily consummated sexually or anything, but through that she inspires the great daring do of all of the knights who are all vying for the attention of the great lady. She is the primary representative of that aspect of the courtly tradition. And here she is making that offer to Lanval, and Lanval rejects her. Lanval spits it back in her face, quite frankly. She sat beside him and spoke, revealing her whole heart. Lanval, I have shown you much honor. I have cherished you and loved you. You may have all my love. Just tell me your desire. I promise you affection. You should be very happy with me. Now, significantly, she's basically making the same deal or the same offer as the spirit lady. That spirit lady doesn't have a name, and we can talk about that. But Guinevere is here making essentially the same pitch. You should be very happy with me. We are told very explicitly that she was, in saying this, she was revealing her whole heart. You can read that ironically or sarcastically even, and certainly again in performance. Marie could maybe be rolling her eyes in this, like, does she ever reveal her whole heart? But you're not sure exactly how to take that. You can argue it so many different ways. Here, she is making a very specific offer that is a little bit more graspable, probably, than the Spirit Lady. Now, the Spirit Lady has magic at her command, and yeah, she can give all of this unending wealth and stuff like that. But Guinevere, as queen, certainly has some power of her own. Certainly can make things good or bad for Lanval. And when she says again very explicitly, you should be very happy with me, that's probably accurate. It's a good thing to be, in with the queen. What she is offering is very earthly. What she is offering is very physical, for one thing, probably also financial, a little bit of support here and there for the perennially cash-strapped Lanval. But she is offering a very grounded, realistic deal to him for love. Again, it's not necessarily sexual. It can be. It's, let's face it, it probably is, but it's not necessarily within that scope. The idea of courtly love is one of an idealism of worshiping a woman and rising to a level worthy of worshiping her, and that inspires great deeds, or at least controls behavior. That's the operating ethos of the courtly love tradition. Lanval immediately shoots her down in a way that seems a bit harsh. "My lady," he said, "let me be. I have no desire to love you. I've served the king a long time. I don't want to betray my faith to him." Yeah, that's one way to go about it. It seems a bit abrupt, seems a bit short. It calls to mind the somewhat cold-handed rejection that Gilgamesh gives to a similar offer by a worshipped female figure. The sudden abrupt spin is not taken well. It shows perhaps he is a little intemperate, perhaps he is a little bit haughty himself. He's now quite spoiled. He feels he can speak this way to a queen. Maybe he's a little high on himself after, having his deity in his back pocket, so to speak. But it's a troubling little turn of events, and in essentially spitting on her, in shooting her down, he goes one step further, and that's where the trouble comes in. He tells her, "I wouldn't be with you because I've got someone even better who makes you look like dog food." Not in so many words. Actually, his words are a little bit more coarse sometimes. But he breaks his vow. He violates the core promise that he had with the spiritual lady, and that coarseness, that sudden flaw that seeps in. You could say it's a tragic flaw of his materialism, a tragic flaw of his greed, of his inability to control himself, always spending. He flaunts the wrong thing. That's the one thing he was supposed to hold special. That was the one thing he was supposed to keep inside. That was the one thing he was supposed to really respect the ideal of, and he tries to cheapen it. He uses it as currency. He uses it as a trump card to say, I can do better, and I have. Yeah, well, it doesn't go well for him from there, of course. When Guinevere goes back to Arthur and she says, "Lanval tried to rape me," it's an analog of the story of Joseph from the Bible and Potiphar's wife, who's, there are all of these other little parallel situations that you can call on. Marie de France is not trying to write anything particularly original here. She's looking to assemble known products into a new pattern to bring out different themes. And here you see her using a story of the woman scorned and exacting revenge. And Arthur is, "Oh, well, I got to do this." And he is outraged, and he goes and he basically, he demands that Lanval face some consequences. But notably, he goes to the members of the Round Table, symbol of a kind of democracy almost, or not democracy, but of a sharing of power where no one is necessarily at the head. He goes to the Round Table and says, "Okay, you guys, you knights, you have to help me figure out what is going on here. You have to help me figure out how to punish Lanval, or if he is guilty." And they say, well, okay, if he is in fact seeing the most beautiful woman in the world on the side, then he didn't lie, and so he is not guilty, and he has to go free. He cannot be punished. Well, Arthur's not necessarily like, well, I just want to punish him. When do I get to kill him? But they set up this little trial system. It's a curious little moment where you can see the power of the king being somewhat conscripted. This is all taking place in the run up to the Magna Carta, when the power of the king is brought into legal bounds, when essentially Parliament is raised, and as a real governing body that can sort of rein in a king who might want to be a tyrant or an autocrat of some sort. It puts limits on the power of the king. Here you see roughly that the governing body of the Knights of the Round Table restrict the power of the king to exact revenge, and they set up this little trial, and the other knights have to basically vouch for, in a kind of legalistic way, essentially like posting bail. Gawain has to go up and say, okay, I will stand by Lanval, and by doing so, he is in fact putting his own life in danger, because it's not just that he's going to lose money by this; he could be killed by essentially posting for Lanval, for Lanval's integrity as a knight. And then if it is exposed that Lanval was sort of making it up all along, then things are not going to go well for Gawain. So that's a significant moment. But you get this scene where then they set up a little court, and suddenly these two women coming, and they are beautiful, and they are just drop dead gorgeous, and they come riding on horseback through the town and up into the court, and they come around and they say, well, okay, this place is good, but you got to clean up a little bit. You got to, let's brush up this place. Let's hang some drapes, for God's sakes. My lady is coming, and it needs to be worthy of her. Again, that sense of purification, that sense of cleansing the sordid world so that it can interact with the ideal. Another pair of ladies come, this time on mules or donkeys or something, and the same thing. And oh my God, I can't believe that these women are so beautiful. And each time the knights who are sitting around watching this are more aghast, saying, oh my God, these ladies must be, one of them is Lanval's love, because they're the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And he's just saying, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. And then suddenly, of course, the lady comes. And it is a curious description of her. She was dressed in this fashion, in a white linen shift that revealed both her sides, since the lacing was along the side. Her neck was elegant, her hips slim, her neck whiter than snow on a branch, her eyes bright, her face white, a beautiful mouth, a well-set nose, dark eyebrows, and an elegant forehead, her hair curly and rather blonde. Golden wire does not shine like her hair in the light. Now, a couple of things on that. Obviously, it is privileging white as a paragon of beauty, and this lady is very white, very pale. A couple of things on that. One, she's coming out of the woods. She's coming out of the forest. She is coming out of nature, and yet she is completely white. If you spend a lot of time outdoors, you're probably going to get a tan. She does not. So that's a symbol of her supernatural status. It is also, of course, a privileging of the white complexion of the northern realms of, let's say, Britain, in contrast to the more southern realms of, say, France and Spain and Italy and these other regions where the sun is maybe a little bit stronger, and the famous clouds of Britain aren't so common. So people are going to be a little bit tawny, is the word that one of the translators uses here. It does have certain racial connotations, absolutely, but this is just what the culture is at this time. And the culture is saying that, okay, this is our ideal of beauty. This is perfection, but it is also a supernatural perfection. It is an unnatural perfection. It is a perfection that is not of this earth. Very significant. The woman comes in and says, "Okay, yeah, all right, I see this. Here, Arthur. All right, great." The king, who was well bred, always dropping that little line, rose and went to meet her, and the others honored her and offered to serve her. When they had looked at her well, when they had greatly praised her beauty, she spoke in this way. She didn't want to wait. She's a little impatient. It's like, oh, okay, all right, great. I got some business here. Let me get it over with, and I gotta go. You people are not worth my time. And she points out, okay, yeah, I've loved one of you guys, Lanval, right over there. Yeah, he's my lover. I have loved one of your vassals. You see him before you, Lanval. He has been accused in your court. I don't want him to suffer for what he has said. You should know that the queen was in the wrong. He never made advances to her, and for the boast that he made, if he can be acquitted through me, let him be free by your barons. So she, a representative of an ideal, a representative of something supernatural, is coming down and saying, well, okay, let me set this straight. Kind of a deus ex machina moment, where the goddess comes out of the sky and suddenly, okay, let's just make this right. She grabs him out of the court. It is a representative of, she is at this point a kind of justice, a symbol of justice, a representative of justice. But she's also saying that, okay, certain things need to be outside of your sordid little court system. Your court system is somewhat flawed, let's say. I am going to appeal this to a higher jurisdiction, my jurisdiction. Now, you can say that that's not really fair, that's not really justice, but she is appealing to a sense of something higher, something ideal, an ideal of justice that is, that can shine through the somewhat muddied attempts at it on Earth. The knights had set up a court. The knights had set up a system of justice. The knights and the society had set up something that Lanval looked like, he was in pretty good shape. He could get off in this. But she comes in and she says, well, no, this is something a little bit different. I am going to exact a kind of extrajudicial justice. And you can see that relationship of the ideal to the worldly. She is saying that as an ideal, she can come in, shine a light on the real, and correct things, but also then inspire perhaps the worldly to aspire to the ideal. She is something better than common life. And Lanval is then sort of swept up in this. And it's very dramatic at the end when she takes him. He gets on the back of her horse behind her, and she whisks him away to, we're told, Avalon, which is kind of the Valhalla of the Arthurian world. It's where Arthur will supposedly go to when he dies. It is an other world of great honor and distinction, an ideal world. She comes in and rescues him and carries her away, which is another inversion on the standard knight's tale of rescuing the damsel in distress. Lanval is very much the woman here. One thing that can't go unnoticed is when Guinevere shot him down, she said, "Lanval, I am much sure you don't care for such pleasure. People have often told me that you have no interest in women. You have fine-looking boys with whom you enjoy yourself. Base coward, lousy cripple, my lord made a bad mistake when he let you stay with him." She accuses him of being gay. She accuses him of preferring young boys to real women. She is a real woman, and she is throwing herself at him. And he is perhaps a little, well, he is not even tempted. He is not even, the least bit interested in a real woman. He is inspired by the ideal. He is inspired by the ideal woman, this otherworldly woman, who acts a little bit masculine by sweeping him off his feet. At the end, she is taking the spirit lady is taking a masculine role in this story, let's say, or one that is traditionally reserved for the masculine. And so you get this weird question of gender, this weird question of sexuality, certainly, but of gender specifically, of, well, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a man in power, out of power, a man who takes the female role of subservience in a relationship or in a society? And all of this, of course, is baked into the role that Marie likely saw for herself. She is very powerless. She is far from home. She has probably no money of her own, but she is connected. And she is on the outskirts of a great power center, and her life is pretty good. But what does she give up for that? What dignity? What sense of worth? What sense of appreciation? Because we're told right from the beginning, one of the defining characteristics of Lanval is that he has no money. But does that mean he has no worth? The story is of the spirit lady coming in and recognizing his worth and rewarding his worth. Where is that worth? Inside. What she is asking is what Marie de France is asking with this piece is a recognition that some worth is interior, some worth is hidden, some worth is not represented by physical exterior like gender, like your mask. Everybody's wearing a mask in this story. Everybody is wearing a disguise in this story of sorts. Everybody is trying to comport themselves with a certain degree of social convention. But it's the interior that has all of the magic, that has all of the potential. Because Lanval is swept away to the ideal world at the end. Whether he's going as as arm candy for the spirit lady, or if he's being transported there for his own inner value, is a debatable point. But he is recognized. He is seen. He is granted that appreciation that so eluded him before, when he was overlooked, when he was outcast, when he was an exile. Now, he's what everyone wants to be.